In the land of Canaan, under the watchful gaze of the God of Abraham, a father treasured a son more deeply than the rest. Jacob, once called Israel, had 12 sons, each born from different mothers. But Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife. And for that reason his heart leaned toward him with special affection. Genesis 37:3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. More than a boy, he was a reminder of Rachel, a symbol of love, of loss, of hope.
From the moment I first saw Rachel's eyes, I knew she would carry a piece of my destiny. And Joseph, he is the echo of that love. In my old age, he is my reminder that God has not forgotten me.
So Jacob made him a special coat, not just any coat, a robe of many colors, stitched with care, a gift meant only for a beloved son. But love can divide.
Wear this, my son. You are special to me.
As David's story unfolds, if you're being blessed by this journey, take a moment to share it with someone you love. And remember to subscribe so you won't miss the next story of God's power. And when Joseph wore that coat, his brothers saw something else: favor, pride, rejection. They didn't hate the coat, they hated what it meant, that they were less. And jealousy began to grow. Genesis 37:4. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Joseph began to dream dreams, vivid, mysterious visions that stirred his spirit. He could not hold them in. At the first chance, he shared them with his brothers. But what he saw in the heavens only sowed bitterness on the earth.
Behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me.
Even Jacob was startled. Soon after, Joseph dreamed again. This one reached to the heavens.
Hear this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf.
The robe, the dreams, the favor of their father. It was too much. The hatred brewed, and no words of peace were spoken between them. Genesis 37:9. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Then came a quiet morning. The brothers were sent to feed the flocks in Shechem. Unbeknownst to them, it would mark the beginning of something far greater. In the land of Canaan, where tents rose and fell like waves in the wilderness, a quiet tension stirred. Jacob's sons had returned from the fields early, their hearts heavy with something unsaid. Joseph, still wrapped in the vibrant robe his father had given him, walked toward them with innocent hope lighting his face. He longed for peace, for unity, for understanding among brothers. But instead he met silence. Replies came. Some turned their backs. Others whispered behind closed arms. Their eyes were shaded with envy. His steps. Their faces, once familiar, now carried unfamiliar shadows. He was no longer just a brother among 12. He had become a target of silent resentment. The next day, as Joseph approached, his colorful robe catching the sunlight, the brothers saw him from a distance. Before he spoke a word, they conspired.
Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams.
Their hearts had turned bitter. In their envy, they no longer saw a brother. They saw a threat. But not all agreed. Till Joseph darkened their hearts, one brother stepped forward, Reuben, the eldest.
Cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but lay no hand upon him.
Calm authority. But secretly, his plan was to rescue Joseph later and return him safely to their father. The brothers, satisfied that the dreamer would be silenced, agreed and waited for their brother to walk into their trap. Joseph arrived with kindness in his eyes, still unaware of the storm around him. But jealousy had taken root. The moment had come. They seized him, and before he could understand why, they tore off the robe that had marked him as their father's favorite.
Wait, what are you doing?
Were hardened. They cast him into an empty pit. The ground swallowed him, and their brother's cries echoed off the stone walls, unheard.
Please, don't leave me here.
Joseph's cries had quieted, but the brothers sat down to eat. Their hands tore bread, their lips sipped wine, as if nothing had happened. A brother was in a hole behind them, stripped and trembling, and they feasted. The weight of what they had done did not yet settle on their hearts. They sat in the sun, hardened, as if deaf to heaven. As they sat feasting, a caravan appeared in the distance, Ishmaelite merchants on their way to Egypt. And Judah said,
If we slay our brother and conceal his blood, come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh.
And agreed. The boy's cries would no longer haunt them if he simply disappeared. The brothers called out to the traders, and Joseph was lifted from the pit. Joseph shouting,
Please, don't do this!
Were hardened. For 20 pieces of silver they handed him over. No more robe, no more dreams, only chains, and the long road to Egypt. Settled from the departing caravan, Reuben returned to the place where they had left Joseph. His steps quickened, eyes darting with concern. He had hoped to rescue the boy in secret, to return him safely to their father. But as he peered into the pit, he froze. It was empty. Reuben, shouting in anguish,
Joseph, he's not here. The child is gone.
Moments in grief, a sign of sorrow and shame among his people. The brothers gathered around him, exchanging uneasy glances. Reuben said with his voice trembling,
Where shall I go? How can I face our father now?
Trying to steady him.
Calm yourself. We will explain everything.
Comfort in Judah's voice, only the weight of guilt. The deed was done. Joseph was gone, swallowed into a future none of them could imagine. Gone, and Reuben's cries still lingering in the air. The brothers stood in uneasy silence. The truth could never be told. Not to their father. Not now. Judah said,
It seemed as though a wild beast devoured him. That is all he must know.
Mion said,
Then we need his robe.
The coat of many colors, now wrinkled and dusty from the desert floor. It once symbolized favor, love, even royalty. Now it would become the centerpiece of a lie. They slaughtered a young goat. Its blood soaked the beautiful tunic until it looked torn by claws, stained by death. And with that, they carried the lie home. It was long, but the brothers carried their plan with cruel resolve. In their hands was Joseph's robe, once bright with promise, now stained with deception. When they reached their father, Jacob, they said nothing of Joseph's fate. Instead, they held out the robe. He reached for it, trembling hands grasping threads of hope. He stared at the torn, blood-soaked garment, and the world shattered around him. Jacob said, choking in agony,
Son's coat, an evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is, without doubt, rent in pieces.
He tore his own garments and fell to the ground in mourning. Sackcloth replaced his robe. Grief became his breath. Comfort, a stranger. All his sons and daughters rose up to console him, but Jacob refused to be comforted.
I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning.
Genesis 37:33. And he knew it and said, It is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. Far from the hills of Hebron and the sorrowful cry of his father, Joseph's journey did not end in the pit. Carried by Midianite hands, he was now a prisoner of fate, and yet not forgotten by God. bound and weary, Joseph entered the gates of Egypt, a land of pyramids, gods of stone, and power built on the backs of slaves. The air was thick with incense and foreign tongues. Joseph said in a soft, shaken but resolute voice,
Lord, I do not understand, but I know you are with me.
Led him through crowded streets to the market of human flesh. There, among shouting voices and heavy coins, Joseph was sold like an object to a man named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard.
Strong, obedient, and young, he will serve you well.
Joseph, son of Jacob, became a servant in the house of Egypt, stripped of freedom, far from home, but not from purpose, brought down to Egypt, into the house of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard. Though the journey was cruel and his heart torn from home, the Lord was with Joseph. From the moment he entered Potiphar's estate, something different surrounded him. Not position, not wealth, but presence, divine favor, quiet and invisible, yet unmistakable. Joseph said, softly in prayer,
I do not belong here, but I will serve faithfully, for you are with me.
Joseph worked diligently with hands that brought order and words that carried wisdom. In time, Potiphar saw that all he touched prospered. Potiphar said to a servant,
There is something unusual about this Hebrew boy. The gods are with him.
The merchant leader said. So Joseph found grace in Potiphar's sight. He was promoted over the household, from foreign servant to master's steward. And the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And in the quiet halls of Potiphar's house, another test arose, not of labor or loss, but of loyalty. Potiphar's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, drawn not just to his youth, but to his character, steady, humble, faithful. Potiphar's wife said, softly but boldly,
Lie with me.
Joseph refused. He would not betray the trust of his master or sin against his God. Joseph said firmly but gently. Day after day she tried to draw him near, but Joseph stood firm. One day, when no men of the house were nearby, Joseph came in to do his work. But Potiphar's wife caught him by his garment. Potiphar's wife said to Joseph,
Lie with me.
He fled, leaving his garment in her hands, and ran from the house. When she saw he had fled, she called to the men of the house and cried out,
See, he came in to mock me, and when I cried, he fled and left his garment beside me.
She laid up his garment beside her until her husband returned.
You brought into our house came in to mock me, but when I lifted my voice and cried, he left his garment and fled.
Heard her words. His anger was kindled. So Joseph, the man who served with integrity, was taken and cast into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. But the Lord was with Joseph still. Even in chains, God's favor did not depart. The prison walls were cold and harsh, yet Joseph's spirit did not grow bitter. He worked diligently, kept peace among the men, and earned the trust of the keeper of the prison. And it came to pass that the keeper committed all things into Joseph's hand. The prisoners were under his charge, and nothing was done without his oversight. The Lord made all that Joseph did to prosper, even behind iron gates. For God was preparing him, even now, for greater things. Of the Egyptian prison, time seemed to stand still. Yet even in chains, Joseph remained faithful. He served diligently, earning the trust of the keeper of the prison. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Then one night, the king's chief butler and baker were thrown into the same prison as Joseph. God was still working. One morning, Joseph noticed their faces were troubled. He stepped forward, not as a victim of injustice, but as a servant of God. Wherefore look ye so sadly today? He asked gently. They told him their dreams they could not understand. But Joseph, ever aware of God's presence, replied, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. Genesis 48, KJV. Joseph listened, not just with ears, but with his heart. With wisdom and humility, he interpreted both dreams. For the butler, a return to Pharaoh's court. For the baker, a grim ending. Still, Joseph asked the butler one thing. Think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews. But the days passed. The butler forgot. Even when forgotten by men, Joseph was not forgotten by God. You may feel buried in a season of silence, overlooked, or unjustly treated. But hold on. God sees your faithfulness in the dark. Your prison could be the pathway to your promotion. One night, Pharaoh, the mighty ruler of Egypt, was stirred from his sleep by a dream more vivid than any before. In his vision, he stood by the river Nile, watching as 7 sleek and healthy cows emerged from the water to graze among the reeds. But then came 7 other cows, thin, gaunt, and sickly, and they devoured the healthy ones without growing any fuller. Startled, Pharaoh awoke. But sleep found him again, and he dreamed a second time. This time, 7 ears of corn, full and good, grew on a single stalk. Then came 7 thin ears, blasted by the east wind, and they swallowed the good ears whole. Morning broke, but Pharaoh's spirit was troubled. He summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, yet no one could interpret the dream. The court whispered and trembled at the silence of Egypt's wisest. 2 full years had passed since Joseph interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's servants. He remained in prison, overlooked by men, but never forgotten by God. Then one day, Pharaoh was shaken from sleep, his heart deeply troubled by a pair of disturbing dreams. He summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, but none could explain the meaning. As silence settled over the court, the chief butler suddenly stepped forward. With a tremble in his voice, he admitted his past failure. I remember my faults this day, he said. He told Pharaoh how, during his time in prison, both he and the baker had each dreamed a dream, and how a young Hebrew prisoner interpreted them. And just as he said, the butler confessed, it came to pass. At once, Pharaoh commanded Joseph be brought from the dungeon. Guards rushed to the prison where Joseph, now a young man around 21, was washed, shaved, and clothed in clean Egyptian linen. Then he was led through palace gates into Pharaoh's presence. Pharaoh looked upon him and said, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. I have heard that you can understand dreams. But Joseph stood with humility and boldness. He answered, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. God was about to unfold his plan, lifting Joseph from chains to a calling far greater than any could imagine, at the young Hebrew before him and said plainly, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. But I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. Joseph met Pharaoh's gaze, not with pride, but with peace. It is not in me, Joseph replied. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Then Pharaoh began to recount his troubled visions. In my first dream, he said, I stood upon the bank of the river. 7 fat and healthy cows came out of the Nile and grazed among the reeds. But after them came 7 other cows, thin, gaunt, and sickly, the worst I've ever seen in Egypt. And they devoured the healthy cows, yet they looked just as empty afterward. Pharaoh paused, his brow furrowed. Then I awoke, but I fell asleep again and saw in my dream 7 ears of corn, full and good, growing on one stalk. Then 7 thin ears sprang up, dried and scorched by the east wind. The thin ears swallowed up the full ears. He looked around the room, frustration in his voice. I told this to the magicians and wise men, but no one could explain it to me. The court was silent. Joseph stood still, not overwhelmed, not afraid, because his answer would come from the one who sent him. grew still as Pharaoh's voice faded, the weight of his dreams lingering in the air. All eyes turned to Joseph, a young Hebrew man, once a prisoner, now standing boldly before Egypt's throne. Joseph took a breath, then spoke, not with pride, but with the calm authority of someone who knew God was near. Joseph said, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears of corn are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine." Joseph's voice grew stronger as he continued, "This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land, and the famine shall consume the land." Whispers stirred among the court, but Joseph remained focused. He was not there to impress, but to serve. He paused only briefly before offering counsel. Joseph said, "Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint officers over the land to gather food during the good years, and store it in the cities under Pharaoh's hand, that the land perish not during the famine." A hush fell again. Pharaoh leaned forward. His magicians were silent, his guards transfixed. Joseph, once a forgotten slave, had spoken like one who knew the plans of heaven. In that moment, Joseph didn't just interpret a dream, he offered a vision. And through that vision, God's hand moved to change the course of a nation. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, "Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house." In one stunning moment, the fate of Joseph shifted forever. Pharaoh stood and removed his royal signet ring, the seal of Egyptian authority, and placed it on Joseph's finger. Then he clothed him in fine linen garments and hung a gold chain around his neck. From the lowest dungeon to the highest throne beneath Pharaoh, Joseph was made ruler over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh declared, "Only in the throne will I be greater than thou." He gave Joseph a new name, Zaphnath-Paaneah, meaning God speaks and lives. And he gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Joseph, now 30 years old, rode through Egypt in Pharaoh's second chariot, and men cried out before him, "Bow the knee." He surveyed the land with wisdom, preparing for the years ahead. Though forgotten by men for years, Joseph had not been forgotten by God, and now, in the fullness of time, every dream was unfolding. From the pit to the palace, Joseph's journey was filled with waiting, testing, and divine appointments. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that God can turn pain into purpose. There's still more to come, and you don't want to miss it. Joseph was 30 years old when he began his work by handfuls. At just 30 years of age, Joseph began his great work, not to rule, but to serve. The 7 years of abundance arrived exactly as God had revealed. And under Joseph's hand, the land of Egypt flourished. From the northern Delta 50. And then, just as God had shown in Pharaoh's dream, the 7 years of abundance came to an end. The skies grew harsher, the rains ceased, the winds turned dry. Fields that once overflowed with wheat now cracked under the sun. From the villages to the cities, a quiet fear began to spread. But in Egypt there was bread. Joseph opened the storehouses he had commanded to be built. Grain flowed from vast silos like mercy from heaven. Officials measured and distributed provisions under Joseph's wise oversight. From every land, people journeyed to Egypt, for The famine had touched the whole earth. Joseph's name was spoken with reverence. But behind every act of provision was the hand of God, guiding, guarding, and fulfilling his purpose. The world groaned in hunger, but God had made a way through one faithful servant. Far beyond Egypt, in the land of Canaan, the famine tightened its grip. Jacob, now an old man, saw his sons growing thin, their flocks dwindling, and hope wearing thin. News reached them. There was grain in Egypt. With solemn urgency, Jacob called his sons. "Why do ye look one upon another? Behold, I have heard there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die." 10 of his sons prepared for the journey, but Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, Jacob, held back. His heart still ached from the loss of Joseph. He would not risk another. So the sons of Israel set out, sandals treading paths carved by hunger, eyes watching the horizon. They carried sacks and silver, but not the faintest idea that their past was waiting for them in Egypt, alive and risen to power. The sun rose over Egypt's mighty capital as the gates of Pharaoh's grain city swung open. Among the crowds came 10 weary men, sons of a shepherd, humbled by hunger. They bowed low before the governor of the land, not knowing they were bowing before their own brother. Joseph recognized them at once. Years had changed their faces, added lines of hardship and sorrow, but he knew them. They did not recognize him. Standing tall in Egyptian splendor, robed in royal linen, crowned with authority. But Joseph remembered the dream. He remembered the sheaves. He remembered their hatred. And now they bowed. Joseph, speaking in Egyptian through an interpreter. "Whence come ye?" the brothers answered respectfully. "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." Joseph's eyes narrowed. He decided to test them and said, "Ye are spies. To see the nakedness of the land ye are come." Shocked and pleading, they defended themselves. "Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies." But Joseph pressed further. He was not ready to reveal the truth. Not yet. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them. And he said unto them, "Ye are spies." Genesis 42:6-10, KJV. Before Egypt's governor, the brothers pleaded their innocence. "We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies." But Joseph, masking his emotions, pressed them again, determined to test both their hearts and their honesty. "Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come." With growing urgency, the brothers opened up more. "Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. Behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not." Joseph's heart stirred. They remembered him, the one who was not. Yet still they did not recognize him standing before them. "Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither." He ordered them into custody for 3 days. In the darkness of the prison, the brothers sat with heavy hearts. They did not know that the man who had imprisoned them was the same brother they had once sold, nor that this test was mercy wrapped in mystery. Joseph returned to his brothers in the prison chamber. He stood tall, cloaked in royal linen, his face unreadable, yet something in his voice had shifted. "This do, and live, for I fear God." The brothers looked up, startled. Joseph continued, "If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me." His eyes lingered, searching, testing. "So shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die." The brothers agreed, unsure of the storm that stirred behind Joseph's calm. As the guards moved to seize Simeon, the others watched in stunned silence. Their thoughts raced, regret, fear, memories of a sin long buried. The brothers murmuring among themselves, "We are verily guilty concerning our brother, therefore is this distress come upon us." They spoke in Hebrew, unaware that Joseph understood every word. Joseph turned quickly, his face breaking. He stepped away and wept. This was no simple test. This was a heart torn between justice and love. But he returned, composed, and Simeon was bound before their eyes. And he said unto them the third day, "This do and live, for I fear God. But bring your youngest brother unto me." And he turned himself about from them and wept. Genesis 42:18-24, KJV. The orders were given. The guards seized Simeon and bound him before their eyes. The 9 other brothers stood frozen, helpless as their brother was taken away. "If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in your prison house. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me." Joseph turned. His face was stern, but his heart ached. The brothers were escorted to their camels, sacks of grain loaded upon them. But Joseph, in secret, commanded his steward to fill their sacks with corn and to restore every man's silver into his sack. It was a quiet act of grace. Perhaps they would remember mercy. As they departed, hearts heavy and minds spinning, they had no idea their silver was riding with them. They reached a resting place along the road. One of them opened his sack to feed the donkey, and there it was, a glimmer. His silver. "My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack." They stared at each other in dread. What had Joseph done? Were they being accused? Had they been tricked? Their hearts failed them, and they whispered in fear, "What is this that God hath done unto us?" The test had only just begun. The road back to Canaan was long and dry, winding through rocky hills and sun-scorched valleys. The brothers, though shaken, pressed forward with their donkeys, their grain sacks tied tight and their thoughts heavy. The journey home became a shadowed path, where the grain they had hoped would sustain them now carried the weight of divine mystery. And in their hearts an old guilt stirred again. The sins of Dothan had not been forgotten. And as one of them opened his sack, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And their heart failed them, saying one to another, "What is this that God hath done unto us?" Genesis 42:27-28. The sun had barely risen over the hills of Hebron when the brothers finally reached home. Jacob, weathered and watchful, stood in the doorway, his heart both hopeful and uncertain. One glance, and he knew something was wrong. Simeon was not with them. As the brothers unpacked the grain, they gathered before their father and told him all. The brothers said, "The man, the lord of the land, spoke roughly to us. He took us for spies. But we said, 'We are 12 brothers, sons of one man. One is not, and the youngest is with our father.' He kept Simeon and told us to bring Benjamin down. Only then will he release him." Jacob's heart sank. Jacob, trembling, "Me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away." He turned aside, crushed. The pain of Joseph's loss reopened like a wound. But Reuben stepped forward, desperate to earn back trust. "Slay my 2 sons if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again." But Jacob refused. Jacob said quietly, "My son shall not go down with you. If mischief befall him, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave." And so the grain brought life to their home, but the household sat under a shadow. One son lost, one son captive, one son demanded, and a father's heart split with grief and fear. The brothers returned to Egypt once more, Benjamin now among them. Joseph saw them approaching, and his heart trembled. But still he did not reveal himself. He instructed his steward to prepare a feast, and when the men arrived, they were led into his house, not to be punished, but to be honored. The brothers feared a trap. They remembered the silver found in their sacks and began to explain themselves anxiously to the steward. And the steward said, "Peace be to you, fear not. Your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks." And then Simeon was brought out to them. Their hearts lightened, a brother restored. Later that day they dined in Joseph's home, Joseph at one table, his Egyptian attendants at another, and the brothers at their own, seated in order of birth, from eldest to youngest. They were astonished. How could this man know them so well? Joseph watched them, watched Benjamin, the youngest, his mother's son. He gave Benjamin portions 5 times larger than the rest, and the brothers did not complain. They rejoiced. Was this the same family that once cast him into a pit? Had they changed? Joseph needed one more test to know for sure. As the golden sun rose over Egypt, Joseph prepared a final test for his brothers, a test of the heart. Secretly, he commanded his steward to do something strange. Joseph said calmly, "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the top of his sack. But take my silver cup and place it in the sack of the youngest, Benjamin." The steward obeyed without question, slipping the gleaming cup deep into Benjamin's grain sack. At dawn, the brothers, unaware of the trap, set off with their donkeys and provisions. Their hearts were light. They had feasted in Egypt, Simeon was free, and Benjamin had returned safely. But before they got far, Joseph sent his steward galloping after them, and the steward said, "Why have you repaid good with evil? My master's silver cup is missing, the very one he uses for divination. You have done wickedly." The brothers were shocked, offended by the accusation. Judah, defensive, said, "Why would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? If any of us has it, let him die, and the rest will become your slaves." So each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground. One by one, the steward searched from the oldest to the youngest. When he reached Benjamin's sack, there it was, the silver cup glinting in the morning light. The brothers froze in horror. They tore their clothes in anguish. What would this mean for their father Jacob, for Benjamin, for all of them? With broken hearts, they loaded their donkeys and returned to the city to face Joseph once more. And he searched and began at the eldest and left at the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Genesis 44:12, KJV. The palace hall was silent as the brothers entered once again, their hearts crushed. They fell to the ground before Joseph, just as in the dream Joseph had shared so many years ago. Joseph stood above them, his face unreadable, and said, "Joseph, what deed is this you have done? Did you not know that a man like me can certainly divine?" Judah said, trembling, "What shall we say to my lord? What can we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup is found." But Joseph tested them again. "Far be it from me that I should do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my servant. But as for the rest of you, go in peace to your father." Judah stepped forward. His voice shook, not with fear, but with compassion. This was not the same brother who had once sold Joseph into slavery. "My lord, let your servant speak a word. My father is old. He had 2 sons by his beloved wife. One is gone, and my father believes he was torn to pieces. Benjamin is the only one left of her children. If we return without him, my father will die from sorrow." Judah bowed low. Judah said with tears in his eyes, "I gave my father my word. If I do not bring the boy back, I will bear the blame forever. Please, let me remain as your servant instead of the boy. Let Benjamin go back with his brothers." Silence filled the chamber. Joseph's heart trembled. The same brother who had once agreed to sell him was now offering himself in his place. The test was over. Joseph could hold it in no longer. The walls of restraint collapsed. He cried out in a voice that echoed through the chamber, "Cause every man to go out from me." The Egyptian servants quickly left, confused and startled by the command. And then Joseph broke down. He wept so loudly that it was heard outside the palace. His brothers stood frozen. The powerful ruler before them, the one they feared, was now trembling with emotion. Joseph took a deep breath, with his voice breaking.
"I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live?"
The brothers were speechless, terrified. They could not believe what they were hearing. Joseph, stepping forward, "Come near to me, I pray you." They came, cautiously. Joseph, with tears, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt." Their hearts dropped. Guilt and fear overtook them. But Joseph's voice softened. "Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, for God did send me before you to preserve life." He reached out, placing a hand on Judah's shoulder. Joseph, smiling through tears, "God sent me before you to preserve you a remnant. It was not you that sent me hither, but God." And with that, Joseph embraced Benjamin first, his full brother. They wept together. Then, one by one, he embraced each brother. There was no anger, only grace, only forgiveness, only family, restored. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, for God did send me before you to preserve life." Genesis 45:4-5, KIJV. Word spread quickly. Pharaoh's palace stirred with amazement. Joseph's brothers had come. The family Joseph once wept for in secret was now in the open. Pharaoh welcomed the news gladly. "Tell your brothers, do this, load your beasts, return to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land." And so Pharaoh gave them wagons, food for the journey, and fine gifts. Joseph turned to his brothers with deep emotion. "See that ye fall not out by the way." It was a plea for unity. He had seen division before. He wanted none of it now. Then Joseph loaded them with provision, but Benjamin, his full brother, he blessed most of all. He gave him 5 changes of garments and 300 pieces of silver. Then he watched them go. His heart burned with hope. The reunion had only begun. Soon, he would see Jacob, the father he had not embraced in over 20 years. Journeyed back over dunes and valleys, hearts beating with the weight of wonder and guilt. They came to the land of Canaan, to the tents of their father Jacob, who sat in silence and sorrow. They stood before him, dusty, trembling. And then they spoke the words he had never expected to hear. Brothers, overlapping voices with urgency. "Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt." Jacob's face grew still. His eyes stared through them. And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. But then they told him all the words of Joseph. They opened the wagons, shining Egyptian wood and linen and grain. And suddenly, Jacob breathed again. He saw hope. He saw life. "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die." The old man rose with new strength. The journey to Egypt and the final reunion had begun. He rose early, and all that he had he gathered. The tents of sorrow were folded, the flocks were herded, and the journey to Egypt began. But before he crossed into that foreign land, Jacob came to Beersheba, to the place where his father Isaac had once called on the Lord. There he built an altar. There he worshipped, and there God spoke to him in a vision by night.
I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee, and I will surely bring thee up again.
Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee. Genesis 46:3-4, KJV. With God's word in his heart, Jacob rose. The wagons of Egypt rumbled forward. Sons walked beside fathers, mothers cradled children. Oxen pulled carts of grain and hope. The entire house of Israel journeyed together, from Canaan to Goshen, from famine to fulfillment. It was not a return to slavery. It was the unfolding of a divine promise. The scriptures tell us, these are the names of the sons of Israel who came into Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher, from Leah, from Rachel, from Zilpah and Bilhah. They came, sons and grandsons, daughters and kin, 70 souls in all, a nation, within a family, a legacy, riding on the back of faith. All the souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70. Genesis 46:27 KJV. And as they neared the land of Egypt, Jacob sent Judah ahead. His mission, to find the path to Goshen, the land prepared for them. Joseph waited. The chariots of Egypt stood ready. The moment long dreamed, long prayed for, was coming near. A father's heart, once broken, would soon be made whole, faithfully to Goshen. And when Joseph heard they had arrived, he climbed into his chariot of state, his royal robe flowing, his heart pounding, and raced to meet his father. There, in a field of green, 2 lifetimes collided. Joseph fell on his father's neck and wept and wept. A son once thought dead, a father once broken, now whole. Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. And he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face. Genesis 46:29-30 KJV. Soon after, Joseph appeared before Pharaoh. With him stood 5 of his brothers, dust-covered, clothed as shepherds, eyes humbled by wonder and fear. They stood in Pharaoh's court, not as criminals, but as guests. And Joseph, faithful to his family and to Egypt, spoke boldly. My father and my brethren are come out of the land of Canaan. They are shepherds. They are now in the land of Goshen. The brothers, what is your occupation? Thy servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers. Pharaoh listened, then looked to Joseph. If thou knowest any men of activity among them, make them rulers over my cattle. And so, the family of Israel was welcomed, not as foreigners, but as honored sojourners in Goshen. And Pharaoh gave them a home. The land of Goshen flourished with fresh grass and flowing water. Tents were raised, flocks fed, and children laughed again. And then Joseph brought his father Jacob before Pharaoh. The king of Egypt met the patriarch of Israel. How old art thou? The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh, the humble man of God, blessing the mightiest ruler in the world. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Genesis 47:7 KJV. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen. There they grew strong and multiplied exceedingly. But as the years passed, Jacob grew weak. The time of his departure drew near. Joseph came to his bedside. He took his father's hand in his own. If now I have found grace in thy sight, Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not in Egypt. Joseph bowed in honor. I will do as thou hast said. And Jacob, resting on his staff, worshipped, trusting in the God who had led him all his days. And it came to pass after these things, Joseph was told, Behold, thy father is sick. Joseph rose and brought with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. The young boys walked quietly at his side, one on the right, one on the left, dressed in fine tunics, with eyes full of wonder. When Jacob heard, he strengthened himself and sat upon the bed. God Almighty appeared unto me at Luz, and blessed me. Behold, thy father is sick, and he took with him his 2 sons. And Israel strengthened himself, and sat upon the bed. Genesis 48:1-3, KJV. Jacob gazed at the 2 boys with tears in his eyes. Thy 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, they shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. It was a sacred adoption, a prophetic blessing. Jacob had not expected to see Joseph's face again, yet now he saw Joseph's children also. I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God hath showed me also thy seed. Joseph bowed with reverence. The legacy of Israel was about to be passed on, and Jacob lifted his eyes to heaven. His voice trembled with memory. God Almighty appeared unto me in the land of Canaan, and said unto me, Behold, I will make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, and I will give this land to thy seed after thee. This moment was more than a father's blessing. It was a fulfillment of covenant, a thread of destiny stretching from Abraham to Isaac, to Jacob, to Joseph, now passed on to the next generation. Leaned forward, eyes filled with eternity. Thy 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in Egypt, before I came unto thee, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. The patriarch's words were more than affection. They were covenantal, a divine adoption into the lineage of promise. From this moment on, Ephraim and Manasseh were no longer grandsons, but sons of Israel. The number of tribes would remain 12, but the blessing expanded. God's promise was unfolding, even in a foreign land. Thy 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. Genesis 48:5, KJV. Jacob looked upon the 2 boys before him, his eyes dim with age, yet his spirit sharp with divine sight. Who are these? They are my sons, whom God hath given me in this place. And Jacob said, Bring them, I pray thee, unto me, and I will bless them. Joseph guided Ephraim and Manasseh close. He placed Manasseh, the firstborn, by Jacob's right hand, and Ephraim, the younger, by his left. But Jacob crossed his arms. He placed his right hand on the younger and his left hand on the elder. Joseph, seeing it, tried to correct his father. Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he. And so Jacob blessed them, not by the order of birth, but by the wisdom of God. He saw what no man could see, the unfolding of nations yet to come. Genesis 48:19. I know it, my son. He also shall be great, but truly his younger brother shall be greater than he. As the sun neared its setting, Jacob summoned all 12 of his sons to his bedside. His voice, though aged, carried the weight of eternity. Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. One by one he spoke over each son, not just as a father, but as a prophet. To Reuben, his firstborn, unstable as water thou shalt not excel. To Simeon and Levi, instruments of cruelty, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Then came Judah. Joseph again. He had blessed his children, and now he rested in hope. Then Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. A flood of sorrow rose from within him, years of loss, forgiveness, reunion, now sealed by the stillness of death. He commanded the physicians of Egypt to embalm his father. And for 40 days they mourned Jacob, and all Egypt wept with them. When the days of mourning were fulfilled, Joseph stood before Pharaoh. My father made me swear that I would bury him in the land of Canaan, in the tomb of my ancestors. Pharaoh, moved with respect, granted his blessing. Go, bury thy father as he made thee swear. And so a great procession was prepared, a caravan of chariots, servants, elders, soldiers, and sons, carrying the body of Israel back to the promised land. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. Genesis 57, KJV. Caravan reached the land of Canaan, to the cave of Machpelah. There, beneath the oaks of Mamre, Jacob would rest with Abraham and Isaac, the fathers of the promise. The brothers stood in a solemn circle as the tomb was opened. Joseph laid his father to rest, his hands trembling, his heart full, not with regret but with reverence. They mourned with loud lamentation. Even the Canaanites looked on in awe, saying, "This is a grievous mourning for the Egyptians." And there, in the field of Ephron the Hittite, Jacob, now Israel, was buried with honor. The promise had not been forgotten. After the burial, the brothers were afraid. They whispered among themselves, "What if Joseph now hates us? Will he repay us for all the evil we did?" So they came before him, bowed low, and pleaded for mercy. "Forgive, we pray thee, the trespass of thy brethren." Joseph's eyes filled with tears. He stood before them not as a ruler, but as a brother. "Fear not. Ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to save many people alive." The past had been painful, but the purpose had been divine. In that moment, forgiveness reigned. The family was whole again. "But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive." Genesis 50:20 KJV. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house. He lived to see his great-grandchildren, a full life, blessed and fruitful. But as the years passed, Joseph knew his time was drawing near. So he gathered his brethren and said, "God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, "When God visits you, ye shall carry up my bones from hence." Then Joseph died. He was 110 years old. They embalmed him in Egypt, but his bones would one day travel home. A promise remembered, a legacy sealed. The dreamer had finished his journey, and the God who walked with him through every valley had kept every word. God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Genesis 50:24, KJV. As Joseph's story draws to a close, the journey does not end here. God's faithfulness stretches far beyond Egypt, into every generation, into yours. If this story has moved you, if you've seen hope rise from hardship or tears turn into trust, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with a friend, share it with your church. Click subscribe, ring the notification bell, and walk with us through every powerful Bible story still to come. Because these aren't just stories, they're lifelines. And sometimes one video, one truth, can change everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. And may the God who was with Joseph be with you in every season. And if you've ever needed healing, if your story includes hurt or words that broke your spirit, visit www.antoniaagbonkpolor.com blog, a place of truth, healing, and restoration. There you'll find free blogs and devotionals that speak against abuse and remind you of your worth in God's eyes. Your past may be painful, but your future, like Joseph's, is in God's hands. Speak life, share hope, and keep watching. Words are like a seed. When planted in the heart, they carry the power to grow. But when words are harsh, bitter, or false, they poison the soul. They crush what could have grown, leaving only brokenness. But when words are spoken with kindness, love, and truth, life begins again. Hope takes root, healing blossoms, faith flourishes. So choose to speak life, because words shape the future,